Milestone could never please Spencer. He's just an MX Simulator fanboy. They don't even show their face now. What they got to say now? What they got to say now? What's up, my dudes? There's a good old crash to start her off. Oh, man. I just love it, dude. I love it. Finally, Milestone puts all this stuff in that I've been saying, at least most of it, right? And it's all these, Milestone fanboys over all this time that's getting so mad at me and my opinions for all these other Supercross games and stuff. And finally, they put most of this stuff in that I've been talking about. And it's like, well, let's just go back to the first Supercross game. They used to say, Milestone could never please me. Oh my God, like I'm never going to be happy. I'm just a Milestone hater no matter what kind of game they come out with. Oh, man. Oh, man. No, they finally actually make a decent-ass game with a, at least somewhat bearable whip system and at least some kind of skill gap to their fucking game, and I'm going to come in here and be like, hey, yeah, the game's actually decent. Like, yeah, that's how that works, you idiots. That first and second Supercross game were a disgrace. A disgrace, bro. A lot of you boys got blinded by the graphics. Completely blinded, and you didn't see the gameplay at all. And now they finally make at least somewhat of a decent gameplay game here, and I'm going to come out and say it. Oh, man. It's just funny, man. You be negative about anything or disagree with something or have a disagreeing opinion with something, and people just automatically want to paint you as, oh my God, you're just a hater of that company. Oh my God, they can never please you. Oh my God, you're just a simulator fanboy, blah, blah, blah. Been listening to it for the past 5 years, right? No, the problem is Milestone never really changed over the past 3 or 4 years. First Supercross game, second Supercross game, MXGP Pro, this, and that. I mean, they went even worse, even more backwards in some areas. But they certainly weren't really improving on much of any of their games over the past few years. Like, literally, guys. Literally. It just is what it is. It's not me hating on Milestone. It's them literally charging you $60 for a 10% improvement every year. Or a 10% decrease, like in some occasions, like with MXGP Pro and MXGP 2019, some of you guys selectively just forget those games ever happened. If I was a Milestone fanboy, I'd probably do that too. Just act like those games never even happened, right? No, they literally go backwards the last 2 MXGP motocross games they've made, and even with their Supercross games from the first to second Supercross game, very, very minute slight improvements. Finally, with this game, one of the biggest things, now the whips actually feel somewhat free. There I go flying into the sky. Let me try to find a decent jump. That one's a little bit weird. Obviously, I'm on the free ride track here. There's a lot of these like rock faces and up and down faces in this little quarry area that get super jagged. So it's actually quite difficult to really throw a whip off of it. But I could tell this aspect as soon as I got into this game. I was like, oh my God, finally. And I'm not saying this whip system is amazing. I'm not saying, oh my God, the whips are just, hell yeah, they're just so great, perfect in this, in this Milestone game. Like I would still say Reflex's whips are way better, quite a few of these other motocross games, but at least it's like to a point to where it feels like there's actually a whip system. Whereas in every single other previous Milestone game, it was literally you just hit a button and it plays one animation over and over and over, and you can't do different kind of whips at all. You can't do anything different. One animation, one button, hit a button, it throws the whip out the exact same every time you come off the jump face. And you had to turn your thumbsticks both opposite directions to get it to even whip in the first place, which is completely backwards from what any of these other motocross games have ever been in the past, right? So they were so far off in the whole whip error category that now it's just them having like a basic what you would expect in a motocross supercross game in 2020. They just have somewhat of like what you would expect. I'm not even saying it's just like, oh my God, just the best whips ever. That's not what I'm saying at all. But like compared to what Milestone has been doing, it's literally just like, it's insane. I never thought they were ever going to get to this point. Literally ever. Never thought they were going to do this. So what you will notice with the whips is now it's actually free, not just in a horizontal axis, right? But also in a vertical axis. You feel like there's... Okay, so let me explain it to you like this. You know how in like Supercross 1, Supercross 2, you come off the jump face, you turn, and basically every single time you come off the jump face, it just does that same-ass slide out to the side type whip vibe, right? But with this game, it's got like a full, like every little minute movement you make either in the steering of the bike or the leaning of the rider coming off the jump face is going to change how the dude actually comes off the jump face and throws a whip, you know? So you can get it like either more pancaked or you can get it more up under the bike or more out to the side, or there's like just... feels like there's just about an endless amounts of ways to throw whips off the jump face, you know, like a motocross game is supposed to be. This is what it's supposed to be, dudes. And now that they've done this, you go back and look at the first and second Supercross game and you realize how shitty and how repetitive and how hit-a-button playing animation whips those games really were. It's absolutely pitiful what they were doing in those first two Supercross games. NMXGP Pro, NMXGP 2019, NMXGP3, all them games. Pitiful, bro. Pitiful. I mean, these are the whips I literally... what should have been in the very first Supercross game is this kind of whips right here. Seriously, this sort of freeness to them. Could they use some polish? Could they use a little bit of like, you know, making them look just a little bit more realistic? Yeah, you can say that, but I would 10 to 1 rather them look a little bit more unrealistic versus not even really being able to do them anyways, like it's been for the past 5 years, right? I would much rather them look a little unrealistic, but I mean, that looks decent right there. I mean, you can toss it out to the side. Like, I'm just really impressed with, this is probably one of the biggest aspects to this game that I am most impressed about, is just the freedom on the bike. You don't feel like you're, you know, locked down, fucking handcuffed behind your back, like barely even can move on the bike in the air. There's a freedom to it. There's a movement to it. And this is so critically important to a Supercross or motocross game. Even if you're not really going to whip all that much, it's important just in the sense of coming off of like big triple jump faces when you're trying to scrub up to the inside of something or whatever, you know what I mean? I'm not just talking about the whip specifically because your movement in the air and how you come off of jump faces affects everything, every other aspect of the way it feels in the air. You understand what I'm saying? So everything affects everything in a sense, and when you free up that feeling in the air and when you come off a jump face, it makes every aspect of the air physics better. And that's really, I feel like, what they've actually done here. So this is a lot more similar to like your all-out sort of whip system. Let me see if I can try to kind of throw some more of a scrub here. And, you know, you kind of see me throwing this same kind of whip over and over, but that's just because I'm doing it the exact same over and over. I haven't really learned it enough to really like kind of do different kind of whips. Let me kind of do something a little different here and kind of show you some of the variation of it, right? Let me see how that's kind of a little bit different than what I've been doing. Let me see if I can come over here and do another one. So what I've kind of learned is like you can definitely do oppo whips and turn up whips as well, but I see there's a learning system to it. There's actually like you got to figure out how to do it, you know, kind of like how in All Out you kind of had to learn how to whip in that game. This is the same difference, you know, you kind of got to learn the different movement of it because it feels free when you come off the jump face with the thumbsticks. It doesn't feel like you're locked on any kind of axis. You understand what I'm saying? Now, it's not maybe like quite as smooth and free as Reflex, but it's a lot more free than what they have been doing. A lot more. Like a lot more. You understand what I'm saying? But like if you just hit something wide open, I mean, you can basically, you know what I mean? Like it's pretty damn free. Like, yeah, there still is a little bit of a, you know, you're turning on a certain axis in a sense, but there's a lot of vertical adjustment you can make with it too, like depending on how forward you're leaning and midways through the air, how much you lean forward or lean back or whatever. You know, you can really change the trajectory and change the way the whip looks depending on how much you're leaning forward or back or whatever. See, like that right there, I was more like under the bike. Let me get this in this other view so you can see this a little better. But there's variation to it, bro. Like, all those other milestone games, those are some of the most repetitive, no variation whips I've ever seen in any motocross, supercross game in the history. I am serious when I say that. Obviously not when you go so far back that there really wasn't whips, but you know what I'm saying. In the past, 15 years or so, right? Like, look at that, dog. God. And there's actually like a skill to it as well. You got to be able to bring it back around, and you can bring it back around. Unlike whenever Supercross 2 first came out, and you literally couldn't even bring the shit back around. You couldn't even do it, so then it was like, what the hell is the point of even trying to whip at all? That was before they updated it and fixed that 2 weeks after I, made a big fuss out of it. Like the comparison here to Supercross 2 when it first came out, this is infinitely better whip system-wise. Infinitely better than Supercross 2. When it very first came out. Let me just go backwards on this Haas real quick. So, yeah, I just wanted to get in here and kind of explain that because I'm impressed with this aspect of this. Like, let me try to go get on a bigger triple vibe Supercross track. Let's see if we can throw some whips on that. If you're one of those kind of people that's saying that, the first Supercross game or second Supercross game had a better whip system than this, or you somehow have, formulated... just fantasize that up in your head and you tried to make it seem like that in your head that those whips are better than this, I just don't even see how you can honestly even have that opinion. Because it's not even so much about how the whips look. The fact of the matter is in those first 2 games, you couldn't hardly even do a whip. And even when you could do a whip, it was the exact same animation every single time you threw a whip. The exact same animation. Like, you can talk about how it looks and how realistic it is, this, and that, blah, 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 whatever, all you want to. But if there's no variation to it, or it's so restricted that you can barely even do it to begin with, then you see it's not as good from the base level. You see what I'm saying? And that's precisely what I'm saying about those first 2 Supercross games. They were so, weird and restricted and locked on the horizontal axis that you couldn't even fucking do what you wanted to do in the air to begin with. Yes, there's times where the whips look a little goofy in this game. Yes, there is. I'm not trying to, argue that. It's not a perfect whip system. You know what I mean? I never claimed for it to be perfect. I'm saying, holy Jesus Christ, at least I can actually do one now and not feel like I'm just totally locked on an axis. At least I can kind of do differences and kind of vary it up a little bit. At least there's something to it. That's my big point I'm trying to get across with the whole sort of, whip system in this game. And you can do some whips that are very similar to, Supercross 2's whips in this game. But it's like you can do that, but then also do a plethora of other different kind of whips and scrubs on top of that, right? So they've got it to that point now to where you can not only lean both your thumbsticks the same direction and it'll whip over, whereas every single other milestone game, as you guys would probably know, if you try to turn both your thumbsticks the same direction to whip over a jump face, it'll literally barely even move. It'll literally do that number right there, and that's about it, right? That's the way every single other milestone game has been thus far. This is one of the biggest things I've been talking about. It would literally do like that. If you turn both your thumbsticks the same direction all the way in any of these other milestone games, let me just show you off this main triple just to show you. If you did maximum turning in any of those other milestone games, it'd do about like that right there, right? Whereas in this game, when you turn both thumbsticks all the way, it does this. That's the difference, you know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying. That in itself, the control scheme of it now, being able to turn both your thumbsticks the same direction, instead of being forced to turn them opposite directions like what has never been done in any other motocross game. I feel like most of us have gotten used to turning both our thumbsticks the same direction to whip, like in Reflex and MX vs. ATV Alive and MX vs. ATV Supercross and all these other games that really started, taking this whole whip thing to another level. Well, then Milestone comes out and forces you to do it the complete opposite way. And it was just such a disconnecting, it kind of alienated the feeling of the game, of the other Milestone games. But now they brought it all back around, and now you can actually whip with turning both your thumbsticks the same direction. But you can still also whip by turning both your thumbsticks the other direction. So there's a full, how All Out kind of has that same sort of vibe where, You can turn both your thumbsticks the same direction, opposite directions. You can have one thumbstick a little more up or down, or to the one to the, like southeast or southwest, or you know what I mean? And it'll change the trajectory of the whip and do a different kind of whip. That's what this game feels like. Feels like you can actually do a different kind of whip, and no matter how you turn your thumbsticks, it's going to do some different kind of whip. You don't really feel like super locked in. You know what I mean? So that's the big positive that I feel like this game is really, capturing in that sort of sense. Like, oh my God, dude, it's just like, and it just adds so much depth to the game, so much longevity, so much replayability, because it's like, man, how am I going to do a whip this time I come off a jump face? How am I going to try to do a whip this time I come off a jump face? Let me try this to see what happens, versus in all the other Milestone games, every single time you even attempt to do a whip, it's just like, oh, wow, that's the exact same animation that I've done 10,000 other times. And I literally can't do anything else other than that same exact whip animation, the one and only whip animation that they have in the game. It's like, you know what I mean? This is a whip system. What Milestone was doing previously was not even a whip system. It was a hit a button and play an animation system. This is actually a whip system. You understand the difference? You understand why when some of you say that those other Milestone games had better whips, you're literally talking completely out of your ass, because those weren't even whips. Those weren't even whips. Those were just hitting a button and playing an animation. That's all they were, dude. Like, seriously. But either way, man, just want to let you know this is a actual whip system, right? So if you're like really hated some of those other Milestone whip systems and stuff, you're going to be pleasantly surprised by this when you get into this game. Pleasantly surprised. Like, it actually feels like you can throw a whip and it's fun, it's turn both your thumbsticks same direction. There's a point to it. You can actually somewhat scrub off some speed on certain jumps, and it looks cool, It's not so, like, weird and hard to do and hard to pull back and all this other crap they've been going through to where it just became pointless and nobody threw whips anymore. Now there's actually, like, it's feasible. You can do it. It's simple. You just turn both thumbsticks same direction. It's, there's variation to it. You try to see what different stuff you can do with it. So there's life to it again. You know what I'm saying? There's life to this shit again. Either way, appreciate you guys watching all the videos. Later, dudes.